live Thought Leader Roundtable. We're delighted to have you here today for what is a discussion about what is a very, very important topic. Now, our programs are a little different. We believe that there's as much wisdom sitting out there in the audience as there is speaking here on stage. So at the end of our 30-minute conversation, we're going to invite those of you in the audience who have a comment to come up on stage and share it with everyone. So all you have to do is indicate in the chat stream that you'd like to come up on stage, and our producer will bring you up and you can join the conversation. It's not really meant to be a Q&A. It's really meant to be a chance for you to express your opinion on this topic today. The topic, of course, is, are we approaching, in the midst of, or about to see the popping of an AI bubble? And I'm really pleased to have four wonderful thought leaders in our industry join me today. So if you four will please come up on stage. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and your company, if you will, before we start our discussion. So Courtney, if we can start with you, please.
For sure. Thank you for having me, Peter. I'm Courtney Ford. I'm Senior Director of Global Business Development at Appcast, a leader in programmatic jobs advertising. My role really sits at the intersection of programmatic recruitment tech and the job board ecosystem, driving quality supply for global hiring companies. And I'm really excited for the conversation today. Thank you.
Great. Chris?
Christopher Campbell. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Reticular Media.
You want to tell us what Reticular Media does?
We're a job search network that primarily works with aggregators, job boards, niche job sites, driving a unique set of candidates through our job alert programs.
Okay, thank you. Martin? Martin, can you hear me?
Martin, I'm CEO of Jobico. So Jobico is a software provider for job boards. We also provide a performance marketing automation solution called Jobico Air, and we have a search and match technology. So we power job boards. We help job boards evolve in times of AI. We help them to turn media reach into recruiting outcomes and ultimately revenue.
Great, thank you. And Faith?
Yeah, I'm Faith Rothberg, and I am the CEO and co-owner of College Recruiter. College Recruiter is a job search site for early careers. And at College Recruiter, we believe that every student, recent grad, deserves a great career and that it's easy for employers to hire them.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. For those of you who may not know TAtech is a community and a resource hub for talent technology companies and job boards. We offer both in-person conferences, but also a year-round virtual set of resources that companies can use to reach a global audience. So let's talk about today's topic, the so-called AI bubble. I want to start with a quote from the Motley Fool. I'm sure most of you know the Motley Fool. Quote, "Every transformative technology of the past 150 years has created a bubble, from railroads to radio to the internet. As much as investors today hope it will be different this time, it won't." So there are a growing number of investment analysts and specialists in the market speculating that we may be in the midst of, or at least approaching, a bubble, an AI bubble. But first, I'd like to ask my colleagues here, why is this even a topic? I mean, we talk about bubbles, and particularly bubbles in the market have a negative connotation. So let's sort of begin with basics. What, in your view, is a market bubble, and why do people even bother to talk about them? Who wants to go first?
I mean, I can jump in. And right now, you have a massive amount of funding going towards companies that have no proven track record or revenue stream. It's the hype is outweighing the earnings. And we've seen in the past in other industries that this has led to companies going under, just a big bust. And even in our own industry, I mean, I looked through the past, and often we would have what's this new, flashy, exciting company showing up at conferences saying they're going to change the world. And I would think to myself, yeah, they're probably not going to be here next year. And more often than not, they weren't. So I think there's just a lot of uncertainty, and companies are taking this money, they're throwing AI in front of their name, and you got the VC guys hoping it works, but in many cases, it's just simply not going to.
Yeah, I can jump in too. I think, in general too, Peter, you were asking what an AI bubble, what a bubble really is in the marketplace. And just to really also set the tone, it's really that the idea that assets are really far overvalued in the market, and that there's going to be a significant and fast drop, which causes the crash or the pop of the bubble, right? So I think that what happens in a bubble is it makes it incredibly impossible to forecast anything. There's so much uncertainty, like Chris mentioned. And the other thing that you also mentioned, Chris, was how we rely on, right now we're relying really a lot on AI platforms that use the AI LLMs that are in those top 7 stocks in the Fortune 500. So I think there's a lot of risk right now.
Well, if we compare the situation to the one bubble that all of us are familiar with in our industry, the dot-com bubble, that began, according to most economists, around 1995, and it peaked in March of 2000. And over that period, company valuations rose by 600%. And then investors began to worry that they had plowed all this money into companies that didn't have a material stream of revenue, or in some cases, even a product, and they panicked. And in just less than 2 years, all of those gains disappeared, which led to huge disruption in the flow of capital, the flow of investment money, and frankly, the reputation of a lot of companies. Now, some did well, but a lot of companies did not. Chris mentioned, I think correctly, that the concern is investing sort of on the hope that something will happen, and then hanging on for dear life until such point as investors grow tired of waiting, and then they pull out of the market.
Yeah.
So it does bear some resemblance to today's situation. Does bear some resemblance to the dot-com bubble, but there is a big difference, and the big difference is that we have profitable anchors in today's marketplace. We have companies like NVIDIA and Microsoft and Amazon playing in this market. They are profitable companies. So we didn't have those anchors in the dot-com era. So there are some who would say, well, this is not a bubble because we've got big players with deep pockets playing in this marketplace, and that means that they lend a kind of foundation or stability that prevents a bubble from developing. What do you think? Is that reasonable?
Would you not consider this maybe as more of a hype cycle as opposed to a full-on bubble? I mean, I could see that there should be some valuation reset, and there will be. But personally, I don't see this massive crash, at least around the corner. I think that there is upside here, and we are going to see these companies continue to grow, and we're going to start seeing the go-to-market application where revenue, they're going to start seeing an ROI. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I think exactly what you're saying. It's not apples to apples in comparison to the dot-com bubble.
I think the fear that many people have is in terms of there's so much cross interdependencies between these big firms, right?
Yep.
So one invests into the other, and one is a client to the other, and there's the projection of $1 trillion in revenue, or there's $1 trillion investment, and there's just like a 10 billion in revenue, and the numbers yet don't make up, and there is this big hope of the return out of that, right? So a massive shift in productivity and a massive output in revenue, but it's yet not. Nobody can do the math with it. So there is this growing belief in this hype. But what I think is the difference also to the .com bubble is that there is so much sustainable value that is already created, right? So there is a lot of open source models available, and a lot of the evolution of these models. Even if these vendors would go down, you could still use it, and you could use part of the value of how you apply the AI. But I see more like I would agree, Chris, with what you're saying. Like there's a hype, right? And a big fear of missing out. But it's probably a lot of hype around the generic AI. And I think what I expect is something like in the separation event, right? So there will be a I would expect a downturn of the real value of generic AI in certain verticals, and maybe one of them is recruiting. But there is a tremendous value in like the integration of AI with the depth of data and the depth of workflow and the depth of brand trust. So this is where I don't see a bubble or an overhype.
See, and I would argue it's a little bit more like the housing bubble in 2008, where there's a lot on paper, and that it's a bit. I mean, the Fortune 500 has the top 7 companies are all these tech companies, right? And there's really only 4 large LLMs, and our industry relies on these 4 different LLMs as a foundation to their platforms. And when you look at what those companies are, like I can't remember if it was Chris or Martin that mentioned that I think it was you, Martin, that mentioned that companies are working together, are doing things, selling to each other. So, that's called round tripping, where OpenAI, and NVIDIA are basically like making it look like on paper that they have all these sales, but they're just trading. So in that case, it's like, that's really risky, because if one of those goes down, they both go down. So even saying that NVIDIA, is profitable and is different than the .com era, I think there's just a lot of vulnerability there. The top 7 companies make up 33% right now of the Fortune 500, and the top 10, which also includes Broadcom, which is a semiconductor and software platform manufacturer. The top 10 is 41% now. So to me, there's a big bubble there. Only 10 years ago, the top 10 represented 20%. So I think that's a big piece of why there's so much uncertainty and why there's what I would consider a bubble. But I also don't think it's going to crash, because I think it's going to be more like the housing bubble in 2008, where basically the government bailed out the banks too big to fail. I think that's what's going to happen here, because these AI companies are so big and we're so dependent on them in our economy.
One of the analysts in this area has offered that really what we're seeing here is layered risk. The risk is not the same for each of these layers. One as George LaRock has mentioned in the chat stream, one of these layers is infrastructure. Another layer is foundational models. Faith, I think you've been focusing on those. And the third is wrapper applications. Our industry is an example of a wrapper application. We integrate what the foundational companies create into our businesses. And historically, the most at risk segment in these layers has been the wrapper applications. So I think, we have to be careful about talking about every organization in the market identically, because they will be affected differently.
True.
Courtney, you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do. I agree with everything that's been said. I definitely agree in the hype cycle kind of way to think about bubble or not. And the AI wrapper is super interesting as well. I think it all comes down to the overinvestment, the fear of missing out, the speculation, but then the ROI at the end of it. And specific to our space, I think that what I've seen sitting and working with partners and kind of seeing what's out there to help improve recruitment is, there's a lot of feature cells rather than baking in tech and solving problems. And I've seen some messy results on the end of it, candidates that, are applying to jobs, but they actually, when the employer goes to reach out to them, they haven't actually submitted an application, some kind of strange behavior that we feel comes from this automated process. And it's just really interesting how much we talk about AI, how we see it in other facets of our life. And yet I don't know that efficiency or productivity has really lent itself to recruitment specifically yet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with our industry, if we can use this technology to improve outcomes, great. But we have to remain focused on outcomes, delivering for our clients, quality hires, streamlining the process, and just making things easier for recruiting managers, which Courtney's company does an extremely good job of doing.
Well, I think one of the reasons, we've mentioned the massive investments that the big players are making in infrastructure. And that amount of money has Wall Street spooked a bit. But the other problem is, to the point you just made, Chris, companies are not yet seeing the gains that we believe AI will ultimately deliver. There was a Bank of England survey recently where 9 out of 10 senior managers said that their AI investments had failed to generate any measurable gains. Now, it's hard to know what kind of investments that they're talking about, of course, but a lot of solutions in our industry now incorporate a significant amount of the technology behind artificial intelligence. And, what are we hearing from our clients? Are we hearing that they're getting the gains they expect from investing in AI through our companies? What do you think?
We're hearing from employers that they still are looking for high intent humans to be applying to their jobs. And I think, just to flip it from the job seeker's perspective, they may not know any better and think, oh, there are all these tools or features or functionalities that help me cast a wide net to just draw attention to myself, but it really doesn't land well because, as we know, there's a lot of noise to cut through. And then the poor recruiters and the direct employers are having to sift through all of that noise. And so that's the real pain that I feel like we're feeling on both ends. But it's that human kind of element that I think is up for debate. Like, yes, AI can cut through and really make processes efficient, but to what extent, where's the human kind of factored into that? And so, I kind of think about this with a recruiter hat on of they kind of benefit even if AI harms the recruitment process and doesn't make it more efficient because they can still bring that human element and cut through the automation.
I think it's a good time to take a step back for TA service providers and look at what problem they are actually solving for the clients. And that gets to the point what Courtney said, and Chris, you mentioned the recruiting like the outcomes. We like to talk about the recruiting outcomes. It depends a little bit on where you are in the funnel with your TA solution, but ultimately you want to either help the client to solve an inefficiency or a supply and demand issue, right? And at the moment, it's an inefficiency question because there is more volume at the moment in the market, and the market doesn't need more volume; it needs more relevance. And there is a great Economist article that asks the question like, who is winning, the candidates or the recruiters? And at the moment, it seems like there's more candidates using AI tools, creating this friction at the other end of the funnel of getting irrelevant applications because you can just put your application automation at scale. So that's definitely one of the big downsides, I would say, that we see at the moment, that there is this growing number of AI applies. And we spend time in thinking about how can we fix that instead of thinking about the bigger solutions and like how can we use the data, how can we create a better matching and things like that. That's also relevant, but recruiters are concerned about the overhead that it generates and the trust issue that they get with how can I even handle all these requests, because the answers that I get from these tools or the applications, they sound so reasonable. So you need to even look, you need to spend more time in the future to find out if this is a good application or not, because the generated applications are looking that great. I think that's a big problem that we see.
Yeah. I just saw in the chat that Bob said no one is really winning in his opinion. And I really agree. I think right now we're all hurting on trying to, and I mean, my recommendation is to take like a really cautious approach and get really comfortable. Like we use AI a lot internally to help our employees all use it to help them do their jobs and be more productive. And I can say on that side, we're winning in the sense that I do feel like everybody on the team is more productive and producing more outcomes with the help of AI as their assistant, not like having the AI be the solution, the final solution. So like human-led AI. I think on the side for candidates, I do think we struggle a lot. I think as probably all of us do in the programmatic space and the pay for performance space to be to handle all the bot traffic, all the AI enabled, like you said, Martin, there's so many applications, and how do we keep the value up in providing better, more quality candidates, right? Because when candidates use AI, it's another way to spray and pray kind of. So yeah. So I don't know.
Well, with that kind of background, if we're seeing a fair number of employers struggling to benefit from the solutions that we have in place because of circumstances beyond our control, bot-generated applications, for example, does that mean that companies are going to throw up their hands and say that there's got to be a different way. We've got to do something different and begin to move away from the kinds of solutions that we offer?
No, it's just on us to improve. I think data quality is everything within our space. And I know speaking with, I think you just heard Juju's about to have their relaunch, and they've been focused heavily on making sure that there's no bot traffic getting through, that it's a good candidate experience. They're using machine learning on the back end to make sure that the algorithm's constantly improving to have a better experience for the advertiser and the candidate. I mean, we do the Reticular 100% of our traffic's through job alerts. So we're doing the same thing. It's constantly making sure that we're delivering the right listings to the right candidates and really just streamlining that process, because we have to continue to evolve, but it goes back to maintaining the basics of our business and the fundamentals and ensuring we're delivering. And that's what they expect.
For sure.
I think that to show employers and to show customers sort of the value add, it's measurement at every step, and it's really what is the outcome. And, unless you have the data to show, I think that given sort of this messiness that we're seeing and sort of this not entirely improved process, there is going to be opting out. And it's something that we do with how we talk with partners and discoverability at Appcast is, how do you think about AI? Everybody's weaving it into their talk track, but really, what is the strategy and how are you going to market with it? And is it a feature? Is it a wrapper? Is it something else? And how's that going to help us? Because everybody is in that same, and they should be leaning into AI, but it all kind of becomes desensitized unless you show what the outcome was that you drove. And if it's not there, then nobody's going to know about it. Nobody's going to know to put it into play.
I fully agree with you, Courtney. I mean, you need to increase the AI literacy within your organization, and I think there is no way back. So it's the companies and the people who understand how to use AI that get the competitive advantage, and it would be a disadvantage to take a step back. But you need to understand where the value lies. Like, we saw tremendous value in automating certain parts of our services that just made a difference. Like, think about social media recruiting, for example, managing all these campaigns and things like that. There is enormous value if you are able to control the outcomes and monitor the outcomes. But if you believe that you're just using a generic AI tool to ask it what to do, that's not gonna end up in a sustainable value. Right. And there's a great Google article, like they interviewed someone from Google that said, well, he thinks there's two types of companies that will not survive this hype or so. And one of them are the AI wrapper companies that just built a whole business model around one model and just add a very thin layer. And on the other hand, the AI aggregators, so that's the ones that give access to a multitude of models and just pick the right one, right? So both will not create sustainable value, but if you have data, if you have trust, if you have brand, you can do a lot with AI, and that's sustainable. I don't think this will go away.
So if there is a bubble that is driven not by what we're doing in our industry, but rather by the market souring on some of the infrastructure investments being made by the large players in the market, or the fact that last year 80% of the S&P 500 gains were driven by AI-related companies, and that concentration of risk begins to spook investors. For whatever reason, let's say that there is some retraction, if not a bubble bursting, at least some retraction in the market. What does that mean for our industry, if anything? Does it make capital harder to get for us? Does it make our customers more risk averse? What would be the impact, if anything, of a bubble at least losing some air, or the hype cycle slowing down a bit? What do you think?
I think there's always a risk in a decrease in demand, like recruiting demand, right? So if there is a financial downturn and financial markets, if a bubble bursts, it has an implication also on real jobs. We saw this in any bubble. There's a lot of speculation around. I think, Faith, you said that maybe this will be another bailout after airlines getting bailed out after COVID, and banks getting bailed out in 2008, because there's so much also public money going into these models, creating this infrastructure and energy supply. But it will have an impact on demand, and the markets seem to be very very fragile at some point, right? So very nervous, and whenever something happens, like even with geopolitical things, like just one person says one thing, and it changes the price of petroleum, of petrol. So that's something where you definitely need to think about what part of your business model is resilient and stable, and what part is like significantly depending on continuous growth, because it's so hard to predict, right? And I think decrease in demand is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think you're right, Martin. I think that every time we have uncertainty in the market, and we saw this, I'm sure we all saw this in April of last year when Trump came into office, and there was he did all that tariff stuff. He created a lot of uncertainty across the globe, and we saw employers say, I'm not sure what I want to do here, so I'm going to freeze my spending right now. I'm going to freeze my hiring. So there's no money in our industry for recruitment advertising. I mean, and that was like probably the biggest example. But I think geopolitically, you're right. There's so much uncertainty across the globe, so many weird things happening that are impacting the stock market, and could really hurt us. It's so fragile.
Chris, any final thoughts here?
Yeah, I just think it's those companies that stick to the basics, try to remain cash flow positive, deliver for our candidates, for our advertisers, and cater to the candidates, and just have a good overall experience of helping HR managers make hires. We're going to be okay. There's ups and downs. We've seen this through the housing crisis. We've seen it through geopolitical tensions over and over again. But those that stick to the fundamentals are still here, and they're still performing and delivering for our advertisers.
Okay. Courtney, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with what Faith has said, and actually what everybody has said relative to this. If there's a bubble bursting or a bubble changing shape in general with AI, I think it's going to have ripple effects to our industry for sure. And I do think that when the tide goes out and you have these entities and organizations that are smart about how they think about AI and how they drive to their outcome and show revenue and real results with it, then they're going to be quote unquote safe, but you're definitely going to have people that are a little bit more worried and a little bit more risk averse and might want to kind of change or pivot. But I do think that bubble is going to change its shape.
I think I would agree with everything that's been said. To Martin's point, the best defense is to run a really well organized, well thought through company to make sure that you are delivering real results for your customers and seeing the benefits of that in the marketplace. I'd also like to posit one other thing, and that is that as we've all said, I think we all said it, the bigger companies are going to be protected, whether, as you say, Faith, it's some sort of bailout or the market just blinks at Microsoft and Amazon and all the others building the big data centers. But there were a fair number of small startups, VC funded, even PE funded companies out there who may not fare well. So the other thing that companies, well-run companies in our industry might look at if there is a contraction in the market is being a buyer, is looking for really good technology, really good teams that can add to their portfolio and help them expand even more rapidly going forward. So we've come to the end of our conversation amongst the four of us. Stephen, do we have anybody who'd like to come up on stage and offer a view?
I don't have anyone putting their hands up right now, but I do have some questions that have been put, some from me and some from the audience. We have from Stephen Rothberg. He was
Uh-oh.
Scary.
That guy.
I should have given a caveat at the beginning of that sentence. Actually, he was asking or chatting with George in the chat, saying, George, how much of a legal risk are those early adopters assuming? He's thinking about Workday and iSIMS customers, given the class action lawsuits that we've been seeing in the US. We also have there's people going back and forward on, and an economist would correct me on the definitions, but whether it's a bubble or a hype cycle or a pendulum, the shape of waves that we've been seeing and we expect to see can obviously be debated, but what we're definitely seeing is that push and pull of the marketplace, where investment goes in and hopefully on the other end revenues go up, but one does not always follow the other. So knowing or trying to predict in advance what to expect is always going to be tricky. Martin, I thought, made some great points on there. One thing I'd like to ask, though, is where are the best use case examples in our industry where success has been demonstrated and companies can show clear success from implementing AI-powered solutions, not just that made existing processes more efficient, but maybe change the nature of the services that they offered?
I can give an example. So that goes back to the what is the mode of a job board in AI markets, and it's, I think I mentioned this data, brand, and network thing, and knowing your customers, right? So we saw a couple of job boards using their knowledge in what actually matters to my users. Like they did surveys, like asking candidates, what do you value in a job posting, in a job posting, for example, what are you looking for? And they applied the results of this survey into an AI prompt, if you want, and each job that is listed on their website is summarized on exactly these three topics. So they leverage the data and the access to the audience to understand what they need, and they applied a simple AI model to extract the relevant data on the job. And it created a much more tailored experience for their users, because they kind of showcased firsthand what is important to them, and then you could look at the details. I think that's a very practical example of how you can create value. And there's tons of it.
We're certainly hoping to see some good use cases discussed in TAtech North America in Charleston in 2 months' time.
Well, yes, absolutely. Thank you for that last comment, Stephen. We will be having a discussion, obviously, about the role that AI plays in the talent technology business, the job board business at TAtech North America. For those of you who may not know, that conference is coming up on May 6th through 8th in lovely historic Charleston, South Carolina. It is, I think, the caliber of the conversation here is an indication of the caliber of the discussions that will take place at that event. We really work very hard to deliver great speakers, but as I mentioned at the outset of this program, there's a lot of wisdom in the audience as well. So it's a very thought-provoking, engaging experience, and I hope you all will join us. I'd like to thank our three guests today, Courtney, Martin, Faith, and Chris. Thanks very much for sharing your views with the audience today. I'm sure they got a lot out of it. I certainly did. And I hope for all of you that you'll come back again for next month's TAtech Thought Leaders Roundtable. Thanks very much for being here. We'll see you soon.